the grapes and then would all our the trash. We would pick pumpkins, the best pumpkins I've ever picked out there.
One tomato plant that I must have.
Oh, it's just a cool day.
It's cider.
We
It's
have
still
cider.
covered.
We actually use this
Big
place called
green.
toolbox right there off the casino.
Yeah, I know.
It was pretty
And you don't like them.
yeah. Pretty
That always happens.
dude, I'm
Okay, commissioners, are we ready? All right, good morning. I'm going to call to order the Washoe County Board of County Commissioners meeting for September 24th, and we will start with a salute to the flag. Miss Jackie Bryant, would you lead us this morning?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ma'am. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Vaughn Hartung, Chair.
Present.
Bob Lucy, Vice Chair. Marcia Burke-Bigler. Here. Kitty Jung.
Present.
Jeannie Herman. David Solero, Interim County Manager.
Here.
Paula Borelli, Assistant District Attorney.
Here.
And I'm Jan Galasini, Chief Deputy Clerk. Sir, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Manager, item number 3.
Item number 3 is an appearance. Honorable District Court Judge Cynthia Liu is here to present to you all on the Assisted Outpatient Treatment Program. So,
Judge Liu, welcome this morning.
I do have some handouts to pass out for her presentation.
Thank you so much for your time. I know it's valuable. Good morning. And I want to thank you for the opportunity addressing the commission today. So what I'm here to present on is what is called our Assisted Outpatient Treatment Program. It is a court-ordered outpatient mental health treatment program where participants are court-ordered to comply with outpatient treatment, which is normally voluntary. Our participants receive intensive case management services. This is a partnership the 2nd Judicial District Court has with Northern Nevada Adult Mental Health Services. We target participants who have severe mental illness with repeated hospitalizations and incarcerations due to mental health issues. Our current program is funded through a 4-year SAMHSA grant, which began in 2016. We also have some state funding of AOT staff that assists with the program. As you can see in our population numbers, Washoe County does not have sufficient inpatient mental health beds for our mentally ill and our community. Why do we have an assisted outpatient treatment program? As you can see from this slide, the number of hospitalization petitions, which are requests to involuntarily commit mentally ill individuals into mental health facilities, has more than doubled since 2014. In 2018, we had over 2,700 petitions. The criteria to be in the assisted outpatient program is statutory. We tend to attract the highest consumers of both hospitalizations and incarcerations. We consider harm reduction a success, so fewer hospitalization, fewer days in the hospital, and less jail time is a success in our program. Currently, we have enough SAMHSA grant funding and state funding for 50 active participants at one time. Washoe County does contribute to this program through court employees. We have a bailiff who attends the hearings. We have a court clerk. We pay for a court reporter for those hearings. We also have county attorneys who represent the parties in these proceedings. We have Deputy District Attorney Herb Kaplan, Chief Deputy Public Defender Jennifer Raines, and Deputy Public Defender Christine Riley, who represents the participants. We also have Senior Deputy Attorney General Julie Slayball, who represents NAMS in these proceedings. In the first 2 years of our program, we served approximately 75 consumers. This slide indicates the services we offer. We offer a lot of family events where we incorporate family members who have a vested interest in seeing their loved ones do well in the community and get the services that they need. The next few slides show the demographics of our participants. As you can see, the majority of our participants are between the ages of 21 to 49 years old. A success story I really want to share is we had a female participant who was under a guardianship through the Carson City Public Guardian's Office. And she was 22 years old, and the public guardian wanted to place her in a mental health lockdown facility in another state. They did allow her to participate in our program as a last effort to maintain her safely in her community. She participated in our program for 2 years. She stayed on her medication. She stopped using illegal substances, and the public guardian's office released their guardianship over her except for medical issues. And she has finished her program and continues to do really well in the community, and we're really proud of her. As you can also see in our mental health individuals, they also grapple with other issues, especially medical issues. These are the placements we have for our participants in the program. My program is a bit unique, as I'm told when I talk with other nationwide programs, that I'm the only judge that requires photographs of the residents of our participants, because I want to make sure that their housing is safe and appropriate for them. Does AOT work? As you can see, in the first 2 years with our 75 participants, the hospitalizations reduced by 61%. So there were 78 fewer hospitalizations for these individuals. A state hospital rate is $805 per day. So we looked at a cost savings of an average hospital stay of 14 days of at least $880,000. Usually when our participants were hospitalized, they're in the hospital for 5 days or less. So we've definitely shortened the time they would stay in the hospital. So I believe an approximate savings is more closer to $1 million. As you can also see, our 75 consumers had a 73% decrease in incarceration. Jail day cost is $130 a day. So the cost savings here was $465,000. So just hospital and jail alone, not even counting court time, court employee time, county employees time, we believe there's a savings of almost $1.5 million. Many of our participants cannot work full-time, so they give back to the community in different ways. They have volunteered at some great nonprofits. We also have a participant who's working at the Reno Bike Project right now, putting together bicycles. And another wonderful anecdote I like to share is we had a 23-year-old participant who fulfilled a lifelong dream of singing and playing his guitar in front of a large audience through the Notables Music Therapy Program. So that was a highlight for him. Some of our participants do work, and they've been able to successfully maintain employment. We have a vocational rehabilitation counselor in our program. We've also developed other wonderful partnerships with other community agencies. In particular, the MOST team is very supportive of our program. Christy Butler has been wonderful. We've also worked with the Washoe County Detention Center to have warm handoffs of our consumers, where they come directly from the jail to our AOT staff and into safe housing. So I really want to thank Sheriff Darren Balaam, Chief Deputy Sheriff Jeffrey Clark, and Captain Mark Bello, who continue to work with us in our initiative. We've also worked with Reno Municipal Court, in particular Judge Tammy Riggs, with warm handoffs for her misdemeanor offenders into our program. So we've been very pleased with all the partnerships we've been able to develop. Challenges that continue is housing challenges for our participants. Housing is a basic need. You cannot expect a person to do well in any type of program without having their basic needs met first. We don't have enough group homes in our community, unfortunately, so we've had to place a lot of our participants in motels because that's the only affordable housing that they have. However, motels are not the safest environment, as our participants are more vulnerable to victimization and being taken advantage of. They are also more accessible to illegal substances that would counteract the effects of the medications that they're recommended to take. I had to turn away a potential participant because she indicated to us she would not be safe in a motel, and we had no other place to put her. for her to be successful. We've tried to have our participants in the homeless shelter, and the ones we've placed there have been unsuccessful. So really, housing is a key component that we still lack. The SAMHSA grant didn't provide for any housing funds, so we often use the participant's Social Security, which is about $800 a month. If they're lucky enough to have disability because they did work in the past, they maybe have up to $2,000 a month. But when a monthly rental income is $1,500 a month, they can't afford that. And I've also seen this in the family treatment program that I also run, where I have worked with families in foster care that are trying to reunify with their children. Reunification is often delayed because there's not enough affordable housing when they're earning $11 an hour. And so these children stay in foster care longer because even though their parents are doing everything that they can't find safe, affordable housing for them. Funding for our program, I'm pleased to indicate to you, will continue after the SAMHSA grant. The state has recognized how great this program has worked in Washoe County and the cost savings, so they are slowly funding the AOT positions to be state employees so that this program can continue and we can continue to do good work. Obviously, we can always use more psychiatric caseworkers so that we can have this program more accessible to more individuals. And I would just leave you with this closing thought from former First Lady Rosalind Carter, who in the 1970s promulgated better mental health services. And I just want to really thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Commissioners, I have nobody signed in. I can't sign in. Oh, I'm sorry. Commissioner Chung, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Judge. I have a couple questions. You said you have partnerships with NAMS, and I put that one together because you are deferring a cost for them by them not going to their lockdown facility, as well as the Washoe County Jail, because the sheriff's budget will not have to be hit further by, for me, unnecessarily jail. So I'm wondering, how much are they paying towards this program, or have we approached NAMS, the sheriff's office, and most importantly, Renown and St. Mary's? Because I would imagine that you're also deferring and re-channeling these clients away from heavy cost burden for these different agencies.
That's correct. Obviously, there's a reduction in ER visits by these consumers. So the funding, NAMS provides the staff and the AOT office. So their offices are located on the NAMS campus. And so that's how NAMS provides that, as well as they did fund several of the positions, including the director position, full-time. So they've assisted with slowly absorbing the SAMHSA grant costs with state employees, which now allows us to have that program continue, and it's budgeted as part of the state funding now.
So we still have some others to go after for perhaps some cash, because this grant is going to run out, correct?
Yes, but I think at this point, the current funding levels would allow us through state funding, will allow us to continue post the grant. Obviously, any support that the state has and encouragement to increase the psychiatric caseworkers for our program would allow us to take more participants. Sure. Because we really try to cap the psychiatric caseworkers because of the intensive case management.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, just keep that in mind. You're too diplomatic to go any further with that, and I will take your lead.
Thank you.
But I'm happy to help you approaching some others who I think probably should be paying if you get into a position. But I also know you're not treating everybody because you have only so much that you can take on as well. So you can see how it's all, and I'm so glad you brought up the housing issue. We can't get people out of foster care, which is very expensive and unhealthy, frankly. Children belong with their parents. If their parents can parent them, they might not parent them to the level I would want to parent should I had chosen to be a parent, but it still has the best outcomes if they're with their biological family, and if they can't afford housing, that right there is already, even if they're doing everything right, if they can't house their own children in a safe and protected place, then they are more on the dole of the taxpayers rather than becoming independent. And then one final question for you, and you might not know the answer, and it might be a future agenda item. Who runs group homes? That's the state, right?
So they're usually private providers, but they have to be licensed.
Through the state?
Yes, correct.
So has anybody went out and advertised? I never see advertisement, and I consider myself a pretty good consumer of information, because I feel like as well with the housing crisis that we're in, maybe more people would offer their home as a group home, obviously getting the proper staff, et cetera, because group homes will also be a way for us to manage our way out of the housing crisis for these vulnerable populations.
Absolutely. NAMS, I know, has been in conversations with WellCare, and WellCare recently had several beds that have been licensed for group homes, because group homes requires an on-site manager,
Yep.
which many of our participants really need
Yep.
to continue to assist them. Health Plan of Nevada and Renown has some new group homes, and they're having discussions with us through Lisa Moore to also obtain more housing for these individuals in a safe group home setting. So we are having conversations, and NAMS is trying to have conversations with these individuals. Obviously, we want to make sure they're quality and they're safe and appropriate.
So if I could summarize, is the reason why you don't hear a lot of call to action for people to start doing group homes is because it's a state-funded entity and they can only afford so many group homes?
So they do have to go through the licensing, which some group homes won't do. And so that is one hurdle. And, you know, this is a difficult population, and unfortunately, we don't have many individuals who are willing to work with that population. I think a lot of the MCOs are getting on board to do that, because in the long run, it does give a cost saving to them as well. And so we're hoping just by the program and more mental health awareness will attract more providers.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Burke-Bigler, I have you next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for all that you're doing. To my way of thinking, this is government's responsibility. This is our major thing that we should be doing, and that is taking care of those who are vulnerable and in need of help in many different ways. This quote from Rosalind Carter happens to be one of my favorites. I actually have this quote posted on my computer at home. It's on the screen on my computer at home, because to me, this is one of the biggest issues I think we deal with across the country. And we don't expend enough money in it to support it. And it's an easy thing to cut back whenever the community, the financial community starts cutting back. That's one of the places government cuts back. Back in the day when I was a full-time lobbyist, I represented some group home owners from Southern Nevada, and it is a very difficult program to go through. Not only do you have to do training, but licensing, and that's good. It's very important to do that, because we want to make sure that these homes are a place where these people who are vulnerable, and they're in need of somebody to take care of them. So I want to tell you how much I appreciate everything you're doing. I know you're going to be working closely with Ms. Howell and the NAMS campus, and I appreciate that. And so I just basically want to say thank you for this program. I think this program is great, and if we just had a windfall of money, you'd be one place I'd be sending it, asking for it to go. So thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Commissioners, anyone else? Well, you know, this is an interesting topic for us, because we, in Washoe County, we pride ourselves on programs that divert individuals from being in the system, incarcerated and worse, potentially, where we give them alternatives. The problem with our system, though, and I don't know how to fix this, Commissioners, is we're siloed in terms of our budgets. And that's the very difficult part about how we fund these things, because we save money in one portion of our budget. We can save a substantial money in one portion of our budget, but that money doesn't flow through to other things. bless you, to other things. And I don't know how we fix that. It becomes very, very difficult to try to fix it. And it's a collective process. I know the sheriff and their staff are very thankful when we can keep people out of the jail. And I know that the entire process works much better when we can get people working and productive and become members of society again. So I applaud these efforts, Your Honor, and it's a daunting task. It's not just a mountain. I mean, these are Mount Everest climbs. But thank you so much for the hard work. It does make a difference. It does show. And I know we were very successful in our Crossroads program and the 24/7 program, which the courts and Commissioner Lucy and other commissioners have been involved in. So this is one more step moving us in the right direction. Commissioners, anything else? Commissioner Lucy, Vice Chair Lucy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Judge Liu, the work that you do tirelessly cannot be thanked enough, obviously. The time that you've invested into this is tremendous, and I've personally witnessed your intense efforts to deal with a very daunting issue. One of the things that we plagued with, and one of the things that I just recently participated in, is discussions about housing and homeless and affordable housing and what we do with that. And through some of the boards that I sit on, we address homelessness as closely as we possibly can. And I don't think people truly, though, understand really what homelessness looks like and really what mental illness looks like. A majority of these issues, we hear about them on TV, they're sensationalized, but we really haven't taken the time to really see this. And just recently I spent some time witnessing the type of mental illness that we are experiencing here in Washoe County, that we're experiencing throughout our area. And it's growing, as you saw in your graph. And one of the biggest challenges for these individuals is finding them suitable housing so that they can get the programming that they need to get back on. It's part of an ongoing process, a very, very structured process. And it takes time, and it takes money, and it takes a lot of community involvement and support. And it starts with you, and it starts with a number of individuals. But I want to thank you for your time. But I would encourage those that, may think they know about mental health, may think they understand, really go down and see the travesty that is going on in today's society. Spend time at the bus stop on 4th Street. Spend time down on our river. Go to the McKinley Art Center. You will see these individuals, how lonely they are, how challenged they are with mental illness, without the services and know-how on how to get there. And it's through programs like this that will help these individuals back to a path of some sort of civility, some sort of life again. And that right to life is really something that we need to strive for here. And I agree with Commissioner Burke-Bigler. I think this is and Commissioner Jung, this is one of our focuses. This is our primary focus in government, is to make sure to take care of all of those individuals. So thank you for your time and your effort. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, anyone else? Any other final thoughts? Your Honor, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and coming to share this with us. We genuinely appreciate it. We know how valuable your time is also. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chair Hartung, and I appreciate everyone's kind comments today, and I really appreciate your time as well. So thank you, and it's worth the climb. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Manager, item number 4, and then will you also tell tech services? I don't think commissioners can.
They're
I see they
they're
fixed
already
it.
on that.
They fixed it. Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Item number 4, sir.
Item number 4 is an appearance by Enterprise. As you'll recall, Enterprise was hired by Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency to do a regional strategy for housing affordability. So members from Enterprise are here to talk about the outcomes of that regional strategy. So please.
Welcome.
Good morning. I'm Chris Kizzy with Enterprise Community Partners. Along with our partners at Truckee Meadows Healthy Communities and the many stakeholders and partners throughout the region that have contributed to this effort, I'm happy to be here today to present to you a brief overview of Housing Our Future, the Truckee Meadows Regional Strategy for Housing Affordability. Housing Our Future provides a roadmap for the region and its partners to strengthen regional coordination and collaboration, to support development of affordable housing, and to foster a supportive policy environment for housing affordability throughout the region. This is truly a regional approach. As we will detail to you for today, housing challenges and issues are not confined to jurisdictional boundaries, and therefore we need solutions that work across jurisdictions and partners that work across jurisdictions to really address these issues holistically. And so we're happy to be here today to present to you our comprehensive strategy, because I think it addresses all the housing needs and provides a clear roadmap for the region over the next 10 years to address these challenges. Just a little bit about Enterprise. We are a national nonprofit with deep expertise in the three catalysts for systems change. Something we believe strongly in is that you need solutions, you need policy tools, and you need capital to truly address the housing needs and challenges that are experienced throughout the country. So we're happy to bring that experience and that lens to this effort. And as you will see in the Housing Our Future document, which is about 230 pages, there's a host of recommendations in there that kind of breathe and weave these three solutions and catalysts for systems change together to provide that roadmap for the region. This process started well over 2 years ago. In January 2017, Schwab Bank brought us out here to have a meeting and facilitate a conversation with a host of community stakeholders. I think every time we tell this story, the level of snow on the ground rises, so I'll just say it was about 12 inches of snow on the ground. And everyone showed up. It was a full house, everybody showed up, and that signaled to us that this was an important issue that regional stakeholders and partners were coming together to address, and no one left that room early, and everyone showed up for that conversation. And so that was really impactful, and that theme has continued throughout this process. Everyone has been at the table. All the stakeholders that we engaged throughout this process have been with us for the entire 2.5 years that it's taken to develop this regional strategy. But that tells you that this has been a community-driven process. This is reflective of the expertise and vision from the region, and we're excited to kind of present that to you today. Just a little bit about the process that we've gone through over the past several years. First and foremost, we established a planning structure to guide this effort. And as I will detail in the next slide, this is a comprehensive group of stakeholders to both inform some of the strategy conversations, but also help with the day-to-day programmatic work that are also reflected in the plan. And so the Housing Our Future document consists of two components. One is the community profile, which I believe we presented to you before, that details the housing needs and the capacity of the region to respond to those needs. The roadmap document, which will provide more of an update today, really identifies the strategies and actions the region as a whole can take to address the housing affordability challenge that exists throughout the region. The level of community engagement has been robust throughout this process. We've had over 18 working group meetings, as well as with the executive leadership team. We've had one-on-one meetings with many of you and other elected officials throughout the region. We've done surveys, we've had community conversations, and has delivered this presentation over 10 times in various settings to make sure that we've incorporated the feedback, we've received that feedback, and that feedback is now reflected in the final document. As I mentioned before, the executive leadership team has been a really great backbone for this effort to make sure that these recommendations and strategies have been vetted throughout the leadership, throughout the region. The state has been a participant as well, and many regional agencies and entities have come together to kind of really provide that lens of feedback. And then we also had several working groups, a community engagement working group, as well as a staff working group, to make sure that these recommendations and actions are really grounded in what's possible in the region, but also sets a visionary approach to how the region can come together to tackle these challenges. Early on in this process, we developed a vision for the region, and this is supported and really reflects the feedback we heard from the executive leadership team that all residents of the Truckee Meadows should have access to a continuum of safe, accessible, and affordable housing options in neighborhoods that offer access to opportunity and a high quality of life. And so we established core principles to go along with that vision to make sure that as we were coming up with strategies and actions, that we were measuring those actions and strategies against those core principles to make sure that it's grounded again with the underlying vision. So in brief, I think one of the things that we wanted to make sure was that the strategies that we're recommending crosswalk back to the key housing challenges that are experienced throughout the region. And so this slide provides a summary of those things. Overall, there is a shortage of affordable rental housing for low-income households in the region, particularly for those at 50% of AMI or below. In the report, you can see the detailed numbers, but about 26,000 rental units is a shortage throughout the region. So you can imagine trying to build your way out of that challenge with the current resources. So recognizing that resources is an important component to this conversation. We applaud the effort of Washoe County in pursuing the Regional Housing Trust Fund. We know that there's additional conversations that are happening in the future, and we applaud that effort, and I think that'll be a great resource for the region to address this shortage of affordable housing. There's also limited types of housing offered in the region today. Predominantly, the region is dominated by single-family housing of 3 bedrooms and larger rental units. And so what that does is that if you're a family that's looking for a single-family home, you're kind of restricted to either buying more property than you need, and then same on the rental side. And so how do we start introducing more diverse housing products in the market? Incomes are not keeping pace with housing costs, and so when you have the rate of cost-burning renters and owners in the region, that really confines what they can spend their resources on. And so when they're spending more than 30% of their income on housing costs, that obviously leaves less room and less budget for other necessities like food, transportation, healthcare. And so how do we start creating pathways to home ownership by building lower cost housing products and offering assistance to those that are renting that could want to become homeowners one day and have a resource that they can use to achieve that goal. Obviously, in this conversation about the shortage of rental housing units, affordable rental housing units, we can't leave the conversation with just talking about production. We also have to talk about preserving what the region has already invested in today, and that's a great asset in the region. And so we have to talk about production as well as preservation. And then obviously with the economic growth in the region and the market pressures that residents are facing, there's always a risk for housing displacement as the market continues to grow and grow stronger and change. So we have to come up with strategies that offer solutions to mitigate potential displacement risk. Early on in this process, we also did an assessment of the capacity of the region to respond to the trends that they're facing today, as well as the housing trends that are going to be shaping the future of the region. And so one of the things that we looked at was how do we leverage the strengths and the opportunities that exist in the region today, but also how do we develop solutions and actions that can address some of the weaknesses and threats that are also impacting the region. And with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Ann, to provide an overview of the roadmap.
Welcome.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having us here. Want to be respectful of your time. We have a lot of content in this document that we're really excited about, that we bring energy of a lot of stakeholders with us about. But for the sake of time, I'm going to focus on about one key takeaway that came out of this strategy roadmap. I'll go quickly through what's kind of in this more than 200-page document and allow you all to take time. I'm sure you will look forward to reading that in the future. But the key highlights here are really around thinking about housing as a platform for access to opportunity, and really thinking about the balance of building the region's capacity to address the long-range housing conditions that the region may experience over the next 10 years in a more proactive way, not getting you out of a reactive stance, and really thinking about what can we do to anticipate these challenges, and then looking at those 5 key housing needs and building targeted strategies and actions against them. So these are those 5 strategy focus areas that directly complement those 5 regional housing needs that Chris talked about, around supporting production, diversifying housing types, helping more residents access home ownership opportunities, preserving affordability and quality, and protecting residents from housing displacement. There are a host of new tools and new programs that are recommended in here. These are all ideas that we hope you all consider as you're advancing the Washoe County's housing needs, and are also something that we believe will work in many areas throughout the region. These are meant to be additive and helping expand your toolbox to draw on as you're making decisions in the future. Are not meant to be overly prescriptive or constrain you from anything. New ideas may emerge over time. These are the ones based off best practice and regional feedback that make the most sense based off some of these targeted housing needs that we've identified. And of course, we know that everywhere across the region is not the same. There are targeted needs that you need to account for in terms of submarket conditions. So we provided that context in the report around where some strategies may make the most sense to target. That was an area where there was heavy regional feedback, particularly around where are those other non-housing conditions? How do you factor in schools and transportation access and job access into when you're talking about targeting your housing investments? And then, of course, this is a lot to do. It can't all be done at once. There's been great action already, but how do we sequence that for success over time? So there are some recommendations around how you could prioritize among these different things, creating a stronger system for regional change. And I think that brings me to my last and biggest point that we hope to convey to you all today, is that through this process, there are a variety of areas where regional coordination jumped out as some of the biggest ways that we could amplify the strong work that's already happening in the region, around communications and advocacy, identifying how to best fill some of the programmatic gaps. There are so many strong resources in the region. I think you all talked about this a little bit earlier in your comments, how Washoe County has really been prioritizing a lot of really strong programs that are addressing the needs of the most vulnerable populations. So how do you elevate what's already happening, look across all those things, fill gaps strategically, and make sure you're most efficiently using your dollars? And looking at that from this regional perspective really allows the region to do that. And so our best recommendation for that came out of this work was to identify a lead regional housing entity. So the executive leadership team that looked across a variety of options that exist in the region today or that might be new entities to develop, and identified the Reno Housing Authority as the one that is best positioned to serve in this role as a connector across all these different great housing work, really looking across what are the long-term ramifications and the implications of what one jurisdiction may be doing over here, one private entity may be doing over here. How do we bring that together into this broader picture of regional impact and achieve more efficiency for everyone against this very daunting challenge? They were recommended based off of mission alignment, based off of their existing jurisdiction that is regional focused, and based off their expertise as a developer of housing, as a service provider, and based off of their strong reputation in the region today. That recommendation definitely hinged on a variety of considerations that the different local governments in particular would need to come together around, including some of the operational changes that might be needed, capacity building, even talking about what the name might need to look like in a future. And so I think that we've had some really robust conversations with the Regional Planning Governing Board. We talked with Sparks and Reno yesterday, and want to ask you for your support to continue that conversation around what that role would look like to help advance everyone's efforts and achieve this goal of a truly regional, efficient housing system that serves all incomes and all needs across the region. So there's a lot more in your packets today. I can even flip through just to give a sense for everybody. There's a lot in here. And I think we ended again on that point of how the lead regional housing entity could really help bring the region into the future, into that proactive stance we were talking about. So we hope you will consider that as you continue, and we hope to bring that conversation forward in partnership with you all in the coming months. So thank you very much for your time. These are some of our next steps moving forward, and we will take any questions or feedback that you have for us right now.
Ms. Jordan, would you identify yourself for the record?
Absolutely. I'm Ann Jordan here with Enterprise Community Partners.
Okay, thank you so much. Commissioners, questions? Commissioner Jung.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's a great idea. I think if one agency owns this, it gets done rather than diffused throughout all the agencies, and that can be a collective area for all the information so that it's no longer siloed. And one of your threats was that you identified was a misperception of what affordable housing looks like. And I can find no better. And when I travel throughout the world, I always go look at their housing authorities. Because let me tell you something, from being a West Coast gal that I didn't even know where our housing authority was in my town, and that's just pure ignorance. But when you hear of housing authorities, what I always heard in my mind from watching movies and, the public consciousness is the East Coast, Chicago, West Side, nightmare, really. It was putting people together to fail. And when you look at the Reno Housing Authority and their performance, and just do a drive-by, I knock them every year, whether I'm a candidate or I'm helping other candidates. They have the most beautiful facilities. I know they have a long waiting list as well because they're so very desirable. They're allowed to have pets, which I think is huge for somebody that can't afford an apartment. You know, you have a pet with you, your rent goes up and your deposit goes up. And the Reno Housing Authority invests, the management and all of their teams, their board, they invest in making sure that those properties are something for all of us to be proud of. Nobody feels like a second-class citizen because they're living at a subsidized, federally subsidized, and then through our efforts as well here. So I think that we have to get that story out, and I think it should be housed with the Reno Housing Authority so that they can be our connector through all of these silos trying to pull, and sometimes we're pulling in opposite directions, not intentionally, and creating more of a problem. So I wholly endorse that, and that is because over the 12 years that I've worked with the Regional Housing Authority, the previous director and now the new executive director, and I'm not gonna lie, I was nervous when it switched because Reno Housing Authority also has always been wonderful. If I would call and say, hey, I'm getting constituents complaining about X, Y, and Z, RHA always gets back and makes sure that's safe, affordable, and a place for people to be proud to call their home. So I fully endorse that idea and love the work that you have done. I'm jealous of your job. I think you have a great job to do this type of biblical work, if you want to go back to the Bible, housing the people that are not housed. And will do anything I can to support you and to continue to support the Reno Housing Authority and the great Herculean work they do here. And providing housing for people who can't pay the market share right now. And that's what affordable housing is. So thank you very much for your hard work and your great work. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Burke-Bigler, I have you signed in next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you guys also for all your work. It's been a fun experience for me to work with you and have the opportunity to talk back and forth on these issues. And of course, this is another issue that government needs to be more responsible for housing of our citizens who unfortunately don't make the kind of money or don't live in the kind of world where they can buy a 3-bedroom house on a corner of a nice street. And I'll have to tell you, I grew up in Reno housing. So I know about it, and I know about it firsthand. And it is a great program, excuse me. It's a great program, and it's an important program for all of us. And so thank you for everything that you're doing.
Thank you. Commissioner Jung.
I think Commissioner Burke-Bigler should be your spokesperson for the Reno Housing Authority because look at where she's come. She grew up disadvantaged. Most of us did, by the way. Most of us, our parents had a hard time raising us during their time as well. And she's a sitting county commissioner, and she does give great news towards the schools around here, because these are her schools too, by the way. And they're my schools, they're in my district, but she is very quick to tell me we are going to be supporting, we are going to be adopting, we are going to expand the library hours. There's your spokesperson, because she also, Commissioner Burke-Bigler, has been a tremendous success, not only as a lobbyist and in her personal life, but then here as a commissioner. But she also, I would say, is in the philanthropic realm of people. That's a compliment. That's not an insult. It's jealousy a little bit. There's your spokesperson. She's beautiful and she can tell a story. And you know, it's not the west side of Chicago story that I have in my head for public housing. So thank you, Commissioner, for sharing that. And you're an inspiration to all of us. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. Mr. Kizzy, could you go back to the slide on groups involved? Could you toggle us back there? I know it's a ways back. Close.
Right here, yes.
Okay, so my question is, this is an interesting concept. The only thing new in the world is the history that you don't know. When I moved to town in 1980, and by the way, Commissioner Jung is right, I grew up in a trailer. We lived in a trailer in Las Vegas because my parents could not afford a stick frame house. couldn't afford it, plain, pure, and simple. I remember when we moved to a double wide from a single wide, and that was, I mean, we were living large. When I first moved to town, I got a job with Harrah's, and Harrah's subsidized housing at the River's Edge Apartments. Actually, it's that way. And what I don't see up here is large employers. Why aren't they stepping up for their employees to assist? They gave us a break on renting an apartment. It was wonderful. And by the way, I made $52 a shift, and rent, we actually ended up, I found some roommates, and rent was $5.25. Not at River's Edge, but in a duplex that we were living in, a 3-bedroom duplex, $5.25. Blessedly, there was 3 of us. So this is not new. And then when I got married, I'm married in 1984. By 1986, my wife and I decided we needed to purchase a home. We qualified, not on the low end, just barely on the high end for Nevada housing, which interestingly enough was, at the time, we got a 9.99% loan, and my friends were so envious because I had a sub-10 loan. This is God's honest truth. I mean, it's all documented. Sub-10. Couldn't believe it. So this is not new. That's all I'm trying to suggest to you. It's just cyclic. And I think you guys have done a phenomenal job of putting this all together. But one of the things that I would like to see is the large employers. Where is Tesla? Where are all of the casinos downtown? Why aren't they participating? And perhaps they are, and maybe I'm just ill-informed. I don't know the answer to that. But why aren't they participating? And I see Mrs. Zadra trying to jump up. I don't want to have a debate here because we're not stylized for that. So I would at some point like to hear about this, and how do we get them involved? How do we get the large employers involved? Because they have skin in this game. It's not just and I'll refer to us as the municipalities leading the charge, and the housing authority leading the charge, and those groups. I mean, the groups that are up there. I mean, they're wonderful groups, but I would really. I mean, I see some banks and et cetera, but at the end of the day, we've got some very large employers, and I do know, and I'm going to maybe get in some trouble here. Western Nevada Supply. For their employees, they actually have houses in certain areas. When they move someone to Elko, they have houses for them. So just a comment, and I see Ms. Zadra. She'd like to come up and speak. It's a comment. It's for. I'd have to be very careful because of the way we're stylized today, and I know we'll have this debate at the Regional Governing Board in the not-too-distant future, and I will bring these same comments to bear. Because employers do have a fiduciary responsibility. I know many of them have a tough time finding a good, solid, reliable employee base. I know this directly because my wife actually works for one of the larger employers here in town, and they have a tough time keeping people. So, Commissioners, anyone else? Thank you so much for your hard work. Dr. Smith, we genuinely appreciate you. Mrs. Zadra, thank you so much. Ms. Jordan, Mr. Kizzy, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay?
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Chair, that'll take us to item number 5, which is our public comment. And comment heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the commission agenda. The commission will also hear public comment during individual action items with comment limited to 3 minutes per person, and comments are to be made to the commission as a whole.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, would you begin I can do this, call public comment.
Yes, sir. First up, we have Ms. Elise Weatherly, followed by Ms. Lily Gabriel.
Good
Ms.
morning.
Weatherly,
Elise
welcome.
Weatherly, Sun Valley resident. First of all, I want to make a public accolade and thank you to Officer Lehman, Washoe County Animal Services, because he noticed my vulnerability in a situation. He returned my dog Chicho to me. Chicho got away because sometimes these two rescue dogs that I have, yes, I rescued one from the Nevada Humane Society because he was a reject from his prior owner. I rescued the other one from my daughter, you know, the grad student of the year that can't seem to keep things up. And so the reason that Chicho slipped out was because I was having a fight with this young man that I'm teaching how to drive over Trump and Clinton. We were just screaming at each other because I said, I believe with all my heart, I voted for Donald Trump because I believe with all my heart that Hillary Clinton was involved in the murder of the people, of the men at Benghazi, because I did some research. Am I right or am I not? We'll find out. So all I'm going to say is that we spend so much money on these vulnerable people, but the people that follow the law, the people that try to do what's right, are being ignored and dismissed, and you just want to get money out of our pocket. So what I will say too is that I have this idea that we go to Story County and build some apartments that are affordable for people so they don't have to commute from Reno. And I will say in support of Tesla, guess what? I think they pay their employees pretty decent wages. Unlike the casinos that squeeze people out because they're cheap. They want to get the least expensive help that they can get. So what they've done is they've taken their decent people, like their financial advisors, directors, accountants, and they've squeezed them out and replaced them with cheaper people. So why? So they could have more money in their pocket, believe it or not. So what I did was I did a little survey around town. I talked to some accountants, and you'll be surprised to find out that internal auditors who have worked for public organizations and also governments say that these guys don't want their books reviewed, that they want to keep them secret. And I thought, well, gosh, that must be why Paul Orphan got away with the millions that he embezzled from Washoe County, because we don't have a good internal audit system. Do they want citizens to come in and help review the books? No, I went over and said, hey, I can be your part-time financial analyst. You know, I'd do it for really cheap because of the limitations that I'm under. Not a single reference was made to that. So Paul Orphan gets PERS. Paul Orphan didn't pay anything back. Paul Orphan makes all kinds of money. The one thing that Paul Orphan doesn't realize, the Bible says that once this life is over, it's not over. What we will do is we will stand in front of the judge, God, and we will give an account for everything we've done, even the motives of the heart. And then there's cults around this community that take God's word, twist it just a little bit to make you think all is well. Do you think that's frustrating? So there will be some houses available when people like me move away. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Ms. Lily Gabriel, followed by Ms. Rhonda Ticer.
Ms. Gabriel, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. My name is Lily Gabriel. I am reading this on behalf of Michael Welling, a Red Rock Corridor resident. Commissioners, thank you for this time to speak. I would like to request that the October 22nd appeal item regarding the Lifestyle Homes Silver Hills development be heard at or after 6 p.m. I'm asking for this today, giving you more than enough time to adjust the agenda for the October 22nd meeting. This item is for a master plan amendment that will not only completely change the character of the Red Rock Corridor, but also is of regional significance and should be heard at a time when the greatest participation and feedback from Washoe County voters can be heard by the county commissioners. You are public servants, and we are asking you to do what the public is requesting. If you hear this appeal during the 8 to 5 workday hours, you will truly exclude voters from the process. I once again ask you to please move the Silver Hills Master Plan Amendment and Regulatory Zone Amendment appeal items to an evening time slot. Respectfully, Michael Welling, Red Rock, Nevada. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
We have Ms. Rhonda Ticer, followed by Mr. Mike Hess.
Welcome.
Hello. I'm passing out what are the declarations of restrictions for Incline Village. I'd like to point out that the new area plan for Incline Village, currently being drafted by Eric Young, is missing a crucial element of regulation, which needs to be added to the plan to make it complete and transparent. The area plan fails to mention that most parcels, 85%, in Incline Village are subject to declarations of restrictions, which specify what homeowners are allowed to do with their parcels. These declarations of restrictions are permanent. They are beneficial restrictions, covenants, conditions, and charges that run with the land. They are currently in force and not subject to change by any regulatory agency. They can be changed only by a 2/3 vote of Incline property owners in each of the 19 parcels or subdivisions that were created by Incline Village Incorporated and Crystal Bay Development Company. When someone purchases property in Incline Village, as part of the title papers, they sign a declaration of restrictions. I've given you a copy of the declaration of restrictions for my home in parcel titled Incline Village number 2. As you can verify in items 4 and 7, my Incline Village Declaration of Restrictions limits my parcel use to residential purposes only. Specifically, and I quote, Section 4, exclusive residential use and improvement states, quote, no lot shall be used except for residential purposes, unquote. Nevada revised statutes, which supersede Washoe County Code, define vacation rentals for less than 30 days as a transient commercial use of a home. Quoting the NRS 116-340, transient commercial use means the use of a unit for remuneration as a hostel, hotel, inn, motel, resort, vacation rental, or other form of transient lodging if the term of the occupancy, possession, or use of the unit is for less than 30 consecutive days. Basically, our declarations of restrictions give Incline Village permanent residents legal standing to sue neighbors who use their property as short-term rentals. Moreover, as specified in Section 7, the Declaration of Restrictions allows for full recovery of legal costs. Fortunately, the original owners of Incline Village had the foresight to create these declarations of restrictions that allow us to protect the value of our residential properties and preserve the tranquil enjoyment of our homes. Thank you.
Ma'am.
Mr. Mike Hess, followed by Ms. Carol Black.
Mike Hess. I'm appearing to request regulation and enforcement of those regulations in my unincorporated area of Incline Village. We have waited many years patiently for regulations around parking that are enforceable by the sheriff. To date, we still do not have regulations. You are now in the process of writing regulations for short-term housing, which has been a blight on our community and for many years, and has finally reached a crescendo. Incline Village was created as a residential community, not as a destination address. Implementing regulations without enforcement or regulations that are unenforceable will not help our current community. I believe we should begin to consider taking over our own right to regulate and become a town. We can no longer sit and wait for the very slow process of county government. Your continuation of violating the basic tenets of TRPA is reprehensible and not in the best interest of the lake or the lake community. At a minimum, you should immediately put in place a moratorium on further STRs being implemented within Incline Village. We have between 963 or 1,500, because no one knows the real numbers. That is 13% or 20% as a density number. That's too high. The impact of environmental and safety is huge. RSCVA occupied room nights for vacation rentals increased 61% in the past 5 years. Of those, 90% of vacation rental days are in Incline Village and Crystal Bay, according to your own staff. This overcrowding is just unacceptable. Further, as suggested by Commissioner Burke-Bigler, giving new funding to IVGID that should go to the sheriff or to the fire department for more enforcement is beyond IVGID's legal right. They service the residents. They are not a legal community body. IVGID, the funding needs to be provided for enforcement. We are quite willing as neighbors to call, but the sheriff must have the right to enforce. The fire department must have the right to enforce. We are tired of feel-good calls. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Carol Black, followed by Mr. Richard Minor. Thank you. And Ms. Black does have some items that I will distribute to the board.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good to see you all again. I am having handed out to you 3 packets. Apologize, but the consolation is the folks that were here before in fabulous discussion, I thought, said their report was 200+ pages long. The total of this is less than 50, and most of it is slides, which are quick to read. So I hope you'll bear with me and maybe go through them all, because I think it is important. I'm going to focus on the first little packet, and maybe you can put your attention to that, which is called summary slides, and start out with the bottom line, which is what I learned about presentations, which is tell the audience where you're going and then try and help get them there. Where I'm going is that vacation rentals, short-term rentals are a commercial, non-residential use. You've already heard that said, I'm saying it again. And that they need to be properly zoned and regulated to protect our community. We've heard about your responsibilities. I believe that one of your responsibilities, in addition to all the wonderful things that have been talked about and responsibilities that you have acknowledged very powerfully, is to protect the communities in your jurisdictions and the safety and well-being of the residents and visitors there. So if you can flip to the next slide. Basically, the bottom line here is, and it's interesting, I have the same clip art, basically, although mine's in color, that was on the previous slide. They're ruining our community. Basically, the short-term rentals have taken over in many ways. It is not a pleasant place to live a good part of the year. It is, with the long-term rentals, he talked about long-term rentals, housing displacement. That's what these entities are doing. They're taking over many of the affordable units in town and turning them into hotels. On the third slide, you'll see a list of data. Mike's already quoted some of it. I spent a lot of time going through data and reports. That's one of the packets, is some slides with lots of data references. I hope you'll go through it and read it. In addition, this packet is basically a walkthrough of an initial environmental checklist the TRPA has, which talks about all of the diverse and impressive environmental impacts that these entities have on our community and our lives. And I'm going to, so I believe you need, the last slide is basically we need to do a very comprehensive review, both from the area plan and this ordinance perspective, get appropriate zoning, which we do not have, and address these issues from an enforcement and a zoning perspective. And last, safety. I had to put my fire slide in. It's key.
Your time has expired, ma'am.
I understand.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and enjoy your reading.
Thank you.
Mr. Richard Minor, followed by Ms. Sharon Zadra.
Welcome, Mr. Minor.
Commissioners, I'm Richard Minor of Incline Village, Nevada, former president of the Incline Village and Crystal Bay Historical Society. As you approach the time when you will be asked to vote on regulations surrounding STRs in our unincorporated areas of Washoe County, I respectfully urge you to not fall prey to the unsubstantiated propaganda that purports to support the benefits of STRs to communities. A January 2019 article on the economic costs and benefits of Airbnb, and this applies basically to all STR internet rental firms by Josh Bivens of the Economic Policy Institute in Washington, D.C., concludes that the cost of STR expansion to renters and local jurisdictions likely exceeds the benefits to both travelers and property owners. I quote, "The economic costs of STRs likely outweighs the benefits." Furthermore, he goes on to say, evidence suggests that the presence of STRs raises local housing costs. Has been so eloquently demonstrated by previous speakers. That's a critical issue. If it's a critical issue here in Reno and Sparks, double that in Incline Village and Crystal Bay. The potential benefit of increased tourism supporting city economies is much smaller than advertised. And he has all kinds of statistics to support that. Finally, city residents likely suffer when STRs circumvent zoning laws that ban lodging businesses from residential neighborhoods. The status quo of zoning regulations in cities reflects a broad presumption that short-term travelers impose greater costs than long-term residents, and examples of these costs are increased water usage, sewage, road maintenance, law enforcement, fire protection, etc. This is the reason why hotels are clustered away from residential areas. Many STR rental units are in violation of local zoning regulations, and there is a strong possibility that these units are indeed imposing large costs on their neighbors. In conclusion, STRs are an acknowledged detriment to most cities. Restricting STRs to the existing hotel, motel, and commercial core of Incline Village and Crystal Bay is the only sensible response to this issue. Thank you.
Ms. Sharon Zadra, followed by Mr. Kevin Dick. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Sharon Zadra, Turkey Meadows Healthy Communities. This roadmap that was presented to you by Enterprise is truly the result of demanding concerns from citizens of our community, businesses included. So here's my chance to respond to that. We actually did have the Chamber of Commerce, who is its multitude of business owners, EDON, and Renown specifically served on each of our panels. Renown is a major employer in EDON for business development. In addition, we had one-on-one conversations, one-on-one, not as part of the panel, with some of the TRIC members. And hopefully by some of the information that we're receiving most currently, Sunday's paper, Panasonic having concerns about the lack of affordable housing for employment purposes, we will be able to bring those people in. We, again, met with hundreds of people who brought to us their concerns and expressed new solutions. Housing issues, as you heard, absolutely cross jurisdictions. And just as you serve as a team with CHAB to address homelessness, we are absolutely encouraging you to continue to work as a region on affordable housing issues. The two really are intertwined. I do applaud Washoe County for the many efforts and programs and initiatives that you already have endorsed and employing to address affordable housing. Even though, however, you have done quite a bit, our community still is in a crisis. The roadmap absolutely expands the region's toolbox, including financial resources and ways to expand capacity, leveraging by working together. Not every tool in the box may be appropriate for Washoe County, but please do choose the ones that are to help strengthen the regional coordination. This regional approach will require long-term, again, it's short, middle, and long-term, 10 years, and it'll require an entity that has the experience and ability to do that. The Reno Housing Authority can provide that focus. We thank you for your efforts, and we are here to work with you to help solve this problem. Please use us.
Thank you.
Mr. Kevin Dick, followed by Mr. J.D. Kleppenstein.
Mr. Dick, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Hartung and Commissioners. I'm Kevin Dick. I'm the Health Officer for the Washoe County Health District, and wanted to thank you for hearing both Judge Liu's presentation this morning and the regional strategy for affordable housing or housing affordability, and for your thoughtful comments. I think it reflects a good understanding of the public health importance of adequate housing for our population. And that's what I'm here to speak on today. The Health District conducts a community health needs assessment every 3 years, and we identify what are the health conditions in our community, what are the demographics, what are the drivers of both good and poor health outcomes in our population. And out of that work, housing has been identified as a top priority by the District Board of Health for the health of our community. As of 2018, our renters that were cost burden was 44% of our renter population, and that means that those households are challenged with having money left over after they pay their rent, and the decisions that they make about food and clothing for their families, transportation, health care, and medical needs. We also know that that housing instability creates additional stress for people that are in those circumstances, and that contributes toward mental illness in our community and for poor public health outcomes over the lifetime of those population or those households. I wanted to emphasize that this strategy has been a community effort. We talked about that snowy morning when you would expect a meeting to be sparsely attended, and yet the room was packed with people that were there and wanted to be engaged in a conversation and wanted to move forward to address this issue. I wanted to recognize the work that Sharon Zadra did with Truckee Meadows Healthy Communities, because this study was funded with over $250,000 that was raised from community organizations and partners all coming together to provide the funding to bring enterprise community partners in. We've all seen plans that end up sitting on a shelf, and it's very important that this one be moved forward and implemented. And therefore, I wanted to also support efforts to involve the Reno Housing Authority to alter as necessary their structure and function to serve the best needs of the region. I urge you to move forward with this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. J.D. Kleppenstein, followed by Ms. Diane Hirschberg.
Welcome.
Good morning, Chair Hartung, Commissioners. I'm J.D. Klippenstein, Executive Director of Action. We've gotten to know each other on a first-name basis, I think, by now. It's just me this time. And I'm here in support of the regional strategy for housing affordability. It's been a privilege to be a part of the process from the very beginning. Our leaders and the community members that are engaged with Action were happy for their feedback and input to be part of this very, very powerful document that I think really provides the right path forward for housing affordability at the biggest possible picture of it. So I just want to highlight two things. One, we are in full support of Reno Housing Authority moving forward as the lead entity on this, and look forward to working with them and enhancing and strengthening their community engagement efforts. And I know that many of the other partners that were part of this process are very happy to be a part of that. So I would encourage you to move forward in that direction, whatever it looks like for them to be the lead entity on this. The other would have been an item of discussion if we had had more than 10 minutes to present, is that right after identifying the lead entity, the next step is to fund the Regional Housing Trust Fund. That is the recommendation or part of the implementation. It's one of those actions. So I, as I've said before, deeply appreciate the leadership you've provided in establishing the Affordable Housing Trust Fund and providing, I think, a path for other elected leaders in our community to follow. I know that you're in the midst of some conversations about what does it look like to meet the needs of our community with a limited budget, and what are those revenue conversations. I want to emphasize that moving forward on any of that affordable housing needs to be a part of it, not just because it's the right thing to do, because it's financially the smart thing to do, because we spent 2.5 years studying what it would take to really make a difference, and funding an affordable housing trust fund is one of the key steps that we have to take. So moving forward, I pray and I ask that you would support this effort and that you would fund the Housing Trust Fund. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Ms. Diane Hirschberg, followed by Mr. Jeremy Smith.
Good morning, Commissioners. I am here to speak on the upcoming short-term rental ordinance, which is being drafted by Washoe County. And I want to give you a bit of history, some history that I think most of you are not aware of. Prior to April 2004, there was no way to have short-term rentals in Incline Village. In March and April 2004, the Tahoe Regional Planning Authority passed a resolution that said vacation rentals, which are rentals under 28 days, are equivalent to a residence. That is the only reason that you can even have any short-term rentals in our area. When they passed that, there were two meetings. There was one in March and there was one in April. All of the records related to the April meeting, except for a summary of the governing board meeting, have been lost. But we do have the staff report from March of 2004. And in that staff report, three things are important. First, in the staff report, they recognized that there could be very serious neighborhood constraints and problems if there weren't a lot of regulations to protect the people. Secondly, they recognized that what if those regulations didn't come in? And so there are two things that they put in the oral presentation and in the draft ordinance that we still have, or the draft resolution that we still have, but we don't have the actual resolution, that said if any of the 5 local jurisdictions have not adopted neighborhood compatibility requirements and entered into an agreement with TARPA, the use of residences as vacation rentals will not be allowed in those jurisdictions. In other place, they stated that if the regulations weren't adopted, that TARPA would be in a position of enforcing the zoning regulations and community plans and stop the use of the residences as vacation rentals. TARPA has now spent several years developing neighborhood compatibility standards, and they are very, very good for the neighborhoods. They would be very, very good for us. They will require people to have their properties to code. They will protect us on noise with some much more stringent rationale. They protect us on density so that I have seen a map that is now being prepared that will be presented to you of vacation rentals. There are streets where 9 out of 10 places are short-term rentals. Now, it is important that you not ignore the TARPA guidelines. It is important that even if you feel you don't need to or you're not bound by those because you don't care about allocations, it's important to look at those. They hired host compliance in 2017 to give them best practices. They have worked with all the other local jurisdictions on the lake, 2017, 18, and 19 to develop these. And anyways, I just hope that you will really look at those guidelines. They're very protective. Thank you.
Mr. Jeremy Smith.
Dr. Smith.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I'm Jeremy Smith, the Interim Director at Regional Planning. Just wanted to take a few moments to express Team RPA support for the regional strategy for housing affordability. Our former Executive Director, Kim Robinson, really helped facilitate the operation of that as well in conjunction with Truckee Meadows Healthy Communities and Enterprise Community Partners. It's been an amazing project. We did some functions such as social media for the project. Also, drafting the document was a group effort, but in the end, one of our staff members, Shani Sousa, has been instrumental in working super hard to put all the cool graphics together and make it look really good. So I wanted to give her a shout out as well. And further, many of you guys know that we're working on finalizing the 2019 regional plan. So we're going through the adoption of that new plan, right? And so we've been working together on this housing project and the regional plan for about the past 2 years. We have a policy in the population growth section that addresses
sort of the highlights of what you'll find in the 200-page document, but also specifically asks local government master plans to address housing affordability and to utilize the strategies in this document, Housing Our Future. So we're absolutely behind it, and we've integrated it, and TMRPA is going to continue to play a role in tracking and monitoring data as we move forward as part of our annual report coming out of that regional plan. So thank you very much for your time today. Take care.
Thank you.
There's nobody else signed in.
Okay, I have no one else signed in for general public comment. Is there anyone else wishing to speak who is not signed in under general public comment? Okay, seeing none, I will close that item. Mr. Manager, item number 6.
Mr. Chair, that takes us to item number 6, Commissioner, County Managers, announcements, reports, updates to include boards and commission updates, requests for information on topics for future agendas.
Okay, Commissioner Burkbigler, I have you signed in first. Oh, actually, hold on. Mr. Solero, do you have any such items?
I do have one item. Chair and Commissioners, unfortunately, our Human Services Director is feeling a little under the weather today. So with your permission, I would like to remove item 16, the quarterly update on the NAMS project, from our agenda today and have it return on the October 8th meeting. With all the information that's in your packet, for those of you that are interested, but I would really like to have the chair or the director present that report.
Okay, so are you suggesting, you said under the weather, that if it was 90, she could have made it and only 80?
No, I don't think that had anything.
Okay, all right.
That's one.
That's one?
Yeah.
Oh, we're counting. Oh dear. All right, so we will remove item 16 from today's agenda. Commissioner Burkbigler, I have you up first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. I have a couple of comments about a couple of different things of public comment that were brought before us. And so this document that is Incline Village Declaration of Restrictions, I've seen this document before, as you probably imagined, a number of times. And I actually did some research with IVGID, and this document has never been enforced in Incline Village, ever. No one enforces it. No one ever has enforced it. There have been vacation rentals in Incline Village since Incline Village existed. As far as we can tell, there is no evidence that there's ever been a restriction. No one has ever sued anybody for doing it. And I just spoke with our district attorney, and I'll just summarize what he said, and if you have any questions, you can ask him. But basically what he said is, this has nothing to do with us. This has to do with the citizens. If the citizens want to sue each other, they can do that, but it's not left in the hands of the county to enforce that document. So we are in the process, for those of you who have not been eating, sleeping, and breathing STRs, as I have, we are in the process. We have dedicated a full-time employee who is doing nothing but working on this issue for the Incline Village District. And yes, we are following the TRPA's plans that they've set out, and yes, we are moving forward in that. So I just wanted to make sure that the commissioners, as you see all of these documentations here, realize that the county is taking this very serious. You can't enforce something if there isn't an ordinance that allows for enforcement. So we couldn't do anything about the problems up there now because we don't have any way to enforce it. And that's what our plan is. That's what we're working on. So I have been meeting routinely with not just residents of Incline Village and Crystal Bay, but also with other counties around the lake. And at this stage of the game, I have not heard from any county who's planning on banning STRs in the lake, in the basin, period. The city of South Lake Tahoe, as you know, did pass a question that was on their ballot last year, and it passed by a very minimal amount. I don't remember the percentage now, but a very minimal amount. And it would prohibit them in any area other than the town center, which is a problem that the city of South Lake Tahoe is going to have to figure out how they do that. It's in court. They've been sued. It's in federal court. So at this moment in time, I believe the judge has put a stay on it, so it can't be enforced. So who knows where that's going to go? That's not our problem. But just suffice it to say that I have met with representatives from every single county. No county, all are working on these regulations. No county is intending to place a full ban up there. So moving on to other issues, as we look at the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, one of the things I'd like to ask staff if they could bring back to us when we start looking more at the trust fund and how we're going to fund it. I would like to know what the two cities are looking at from a funding perspective, because I don't think it's the responsibility of just the county to put money into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I think this should be a regional impact, and money should go from the region into it. And I'd be curious how they're planning or what they are looking at. I know right now nobody really has free money just sitting around to stick into anything, but as we've seen from the presentations that have been made here today, this is a very, very key issue for us as governments in this area. We have citizens who need housing who can't afford to meet the housing requirements of even paying rent in this expensive and growing economy that we are living in. So if staff could bring us some ideas as we look at this issue further on that, I would appreciate it. Additionally, I have two wonderful sheriff guys sitting here, and I want to tell them thank you very much for all the work you guys are doing in Incline as it relates to the parking issues and the speed limit issues. I know all of you guys are working on it. I've talked with the sheriff on a couple of occasions, as well as several deputies who have been up, several of the sheriff deputies who've been up to meet with Incline Village residents. I thank you for that. This is really a big issue. It will calm down a little bit now as we're going into winter, as you well know. But before we get back to summer again, we'll be hearing it head up again. And so thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for assisting me in the efforts of trying to bring some of this stuff together. I really appreciate it. And that's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Herman, I have you signed in next.
Yes, thank you very much. An earlier public speaker had mentioned about the Silver Hills project that was going to come before us in October, and they had requested a 6 o'clock occurrence for that, and so I would sure like to back them up and ask for that. It's at all possible. I think they deserve that. It's a public item, so very public. Thank you.
Okay. Is that all? Commissioner Lucy, I have you next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the opportunity to speak this morning. A couple things I wanted to bring to the attention of the board. We did participate in, Commissioner Burkbigler and I, last week on Thursday in a event organized by the City of Reno, the Community Homeless Advisory Board, and OrgCode to have a strategic visioning session to discuss homeless in our community. And they brought forward some interesting ideas. The room was packed. There was probably 200 to 300 people there to have the discussion and how it surrounded the challenges that this region sees with homelessness. And I have to tell you, I was very, very optimistic and very hopeful that this session was beneficial, and it was. It truly became a very beneficial session. We sat there for almost 7 hours, having very robust discussions about a number of different things. So I want to thank everybody for coming out and participating in that strategic visioning session. Hopefully, we'll bring some future policy back to all three entities for some discussions about how we move forward and address homelessness from those standpoints. But also, I think the public got a very robust understanding of the challenges that not only does the region face, but local entities face when addressing the homeless challenges here within the region. And, you know, individuals that are homeless are not just, there are many phases to homelessness. We heard about mental health this morning. We've heard about veterans. We've heard about young children that are homeless. There are a number of individuals, and it's quite, for me, it's very upsetting to see some of those people having to go through that and endure that every day. So hopefully we can continue to rally together with our regional partners to address that. So I want to thank the City of Reno, City of Sparks, and the OrgCode for hosting that. Next, this weekend, for all of you that aren't individuals that utilize the river, but those that do, maybe go down this weekend. Keep Truckee Meadows Beautiful is hosting their annual river cleanup event. You can go to keeptruckeemeadowsbeautiful.com and sign up for their regional their event this weekend. It's from 9 to noon. Get out. Help your local citizens keep our river beautiful. I enjoy fishing in it quite often, and it's kind of upsetting to see when trash and that is floating through. So, you know, it's one of those assets that I don't think people realize is very valuable to us, because many cities don't have a gorgeous natural river that runs through it, and we're very fortunate to have that. So if you can get out, take some time on Saturday morning, if you have no plans and no good college football teams to watch, I highly suggest get out and participate. With that, Mr. Chair, I have nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Jung, you're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple of things. One that came up during the presentation with Councilwoman Zadra and her team, and I would like staff to look at how much money we lose when we take pass-through money through the state that never intends to ever do anything with that money, but pay a bureaucrat to pass us through our money. How come we don't take possession of it directly? Because many of all the grants that we deal with are pass-throughs that the state has no intention of ever hiring anybody to actually affect change with this pass-through, but they take a nice chunk off the top for the admin that was required for that. So I want to know what the state law is on that. How do we circumscribe said state law or change state law so that we are no longer passing through and a percentage is taken off the top for somebody to shuffle papers, it's not even papers anymore, for somebody to forward an email, essentially. So I would like to look at that and what capacity, if any, that we have to change that. It might be a legislative change, which of course the state will not be in favor of. But I still think it's worth talking about and challenging in this era of not enough money to cover anything, really. So that's my first question about today. I want to tell the board and the public, I went to the 2019 Global Climate Change Summit up at UNR yesterday. Thank you, Mr. Interim Manager, for paying for my fees for that through our county funding. A couple of things that came up that I need more information about. You might double think that next time you pay for me to go to an event. I found out something I've never heard about is that there are financing districts that the state has identified for commercial properties that will finance projects to decrease energy consumption and emissions. Are we eligible? Where are these areas? What's going on there? Because that will help us, I think, as well with affordable housing. There is also a big push nationally about especially Moody's, who does the evaluation of credit ratings for local governments, and they are using the sustainability plans of entities as a way to assess their credit worthiness. So I would like to know, what is the Washoe County Sustainability Plan, and I need a copy of that. I do know that the City of Reno has one, Washoe County School District has one that's referred to as SPIN, Sustainable Partners in Northern Nevada. How do we be a part of that? Where's our documentation if that indeed is something that we will be evaluated on in our credit worthiness? I also found out yesterday that I-80 has been identified as an electric highway through the Governor's Office of Energy. Can I get some more information on that, considering that's our jurisdiction? A long part of I-80 is Washoe County's jurisdiction, and what does that get us being identified as an electric highway? And then finally, it's funny, I follow a lot of national news from local governments, and I see where the state of Arizona took their Volkswagen settlement funds and got new buses, and I'm guessing this Volkswagen settlement fund, I thought it was just Arizona, not thinking, any further than that. I guess that's an international settlement fund that everybody got money for, including the good old state of Nevada. What are we doing with our Volkswagen settlement funds? And I believe it's because Volkswagen monkeyed with the data, so it looked like they had better emission standards than what they did, knowingly and capriciously did that so people would buy Volkswagens. So where's ours, and where's it going, and where does Washoe County, the second largest urban area in all of Nevada, where's our money? And why would the state be the one in charge of that? And if it's not benefiting students, school buses, et cetera, building new schools, building affordable housing, what is it being used for, and how do we get our hands on that? So that is all that I have for this week. I'll have more next week as well, but that I did learn a lot from the Global Climate Change Summit, and it was another one like the engineering salons that I'm going to. They don't take forever. So you get to learn the high levels, and you're not in a meeting for 7 hours. So I strongly suggest that if any of you are interested in, or if you're not, I'll continue pushing these issues because I think they're worthwhile, and I especially want to know, why isn't the governor's office giving us any information about all this money that they're using and identifying their own areas from Carson City? I mean, let's be honest, from Vegas. So I do need staff to get on that sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Burke-Bigler, I have you signed in again.
Yes, thank you very much. I forgot one important issue. I had the opportunity to attend a function, and both the City of Reno, it was an EDON function, both the City of Reno and the City of Sparks were getting awards for having an art commission that is looking, that participates in the whole art program, and I wonder why the county doesn't have that. I know we have the balloon races, which I think is art. We have Burning Man, which is clearly art of some kind, and we have the art trail. And so why do we not have a commission that basically pulls together and oversees our various different art things that we have in the county? And I'd like to know how we go about getting that set up. So if you could provide that information, I would appreciate it, Mr. Chair. Sorry, and thank you.
No, that's all good.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Manager.
Mr. Chair, one other thing, just to dovetail off of Commissioner Burke-Bigler's comment, today in our agenda today, under the consent item, under 7F2, we're going to be talking about art. You know, the City of Reno's Art Commission is actually putting money in, but I mean, they are going to be painting an item on our building. And so I think we should have a little bit of that discussion in regards to, it's our property, what's going on. You know, I think those are things, yeah, they're paying for it, but it's still our building. So those things, you're probably right. I agree with the Art Commission. We do play a big role in art here in the county and should have a little bit more of a say in that.
Okay. Commissioner Jung, you're signed in again.
One more thing I forgot, and Commissioner Burke-Bigler reminded me. Ms. Mullen, who is our dedicated staff working on the short-term rental issues, which is countywide, can't do spot zoning in Climb Village, just FYI. I want Kelly to bring back research. Do short-term rentals increase or decrease the cost of rents in areas, as was claimed by a public speaker? And then I also would love to know, in Incline Village, how many of the percentage of people there are year-round residents, and how many are not? Because I have a gut feeling, but doesn't mean that that's data. And then one other claim that was made by a public speaker in terms of the change of hotels versus vacation rental unit. I think you're seeing that from the younger generation. We don't want to stay at a soulless hotel. Sorry, I don't. I'd much rather stay in the hood that I'm visiting. You know, I'm going to New York City in October. I'm staying at a vacation rental because I want to be right downtown and not in some Sheraton on whatever. So I think that we need some more data to inform too, what are the current and the future renters, vacation renters, looking for? And I know for myself and people of my age cohort, they don't want to stay at hotels or motels. It's just not interesting to them. They'll pay more to be at a vacation rental home because it's more centrally located. They get a sense of the real feel of the city, et cetera. So I'd like some data on that as well. What's the trend? Not necessarily what's the cheapest way to do everything, because I don't think that's always the way we choose our vacations, Scott Jung. But what is the most enjoyable way to choose our vacations in terms of pleasure?
She didn't mean it, Scott.
Oh, yeah, I did. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner, we had actually all thrown together for you to stay at the Waldorf Astoria, but now that's now we've okay. I have just a couple of things. I received a letter from a former county commissioner from Idaho, Gem County Commissioner Miss Michelle Chadwick, and she asked me, and I have already forwarded this, but she asked me to publicly thank the Washoe County Search and Rescue Team for the good work that they did on the airplane crash and how rapidly they were deployed, and then the deputies that basically were assigned to guard the crash. She was very appreciative. Apparently they were very, very, very dear family friends. And so please extend our debt of gratitude to the SARS team. I don't think we give them enough credit for what they do. You know, they are completely out there on their own. They're using their own airplanes and their own equipment, and perhaps we need to, Mr. Manager, bring the SARS team in at some point and acknowledge them. I know we have in the past, but I think it's probably time to do that again. And then one other thing, I was not in attendance at my last CAB meeting. Sadly, I have been dealing with some family issues, but there was a complaint made regarding speeds on Dolores. And so, Mr. Manager, if we can, they said that they had completed a petition to have speed bumps put in. Dolores is one of those roads that we know has a fairly deep use of people that do not live in the neighborhood because they're going up to that BLM. That's one of the accesses to BLM land, and there's a lot of speeders on Dolores directly. I'm not convinced that speed bumps are the solution. I have speed bumps on Sky Ranch, and they speed up for them. That's what they do. Instead of hitting them at 15 miles an hour, they hit them at 45 or 50 miles an hour. So I by the way, and I will own this, some people will call me the knucklehead who got them put in on our street because a young man was hit on his bicycle. They are effective for some, but not for all. So, but I do want to. We do need to bring that back, Dolores. It's a ticking time bomb for us, for someone to get injured, because it's a fairly narrow street and well traveled. And then, Mr. Manager, we probably need to talk about publicly the Sierra Safari Zoo and what will happen with that. There's been a request that we use Rancho San Rafael as a petting zoo. I'm not looking for any feedback on this, but I will say publicly, I am deeply concerned about this. I do not want Washoe County to be responsible for exotic animals. They require a special subset of society to care for them, and it's a very expensive endeavor. Perhaps we can look at some of our regional partners to assist us. Animal Ark is the first one that comes to mind. They, of course, have kept tigers in the past and cheetahs and et cetera. Perhaps they can be of assistance, but I'm very concerned about Washoe County becoming liable for an organization that is changing hands. Commissioner Birkbiggler, I have you signed in again.
For some reason, I just keep remembering things that I wanted to say. I had the pleasure of attending the air races, not this past Saturday, but Saturday before, and I was there as a guest of the airport authority, and they gave me a tour of the pylons. And so I was out at a pylon as jets were racing around them. I have to tell you, if you've not had a chance to do that, you should go do it. It was phenomenal. Phenomenal to be out there with these jets that are racing around pylons at about 500 miles an hour, about 40 feet off the ground. And not always 40 feet off the ground. They have to be above the pylon, which is 30 feet high when they come past the pylon. But they're not, it was amazing. So next year, call the airport authority and say you want to go too, because it was worth it. Really great. Thank you.
Vice Chair Lucy, I have you signed in again as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and you spurred something for me. We did lose Under Sheriff Yarborough, but I do want to bring up one thing from the county standpoint. One of the challenges that we see at the schools here in the unincorporated area is that a lot of the roads and some of the road improvements along some of those schools, at least in my district, aren't necessarily all there. And as we've walked and watched these kids go back to school, a lot of the school district has changed their busing, so a lot more kids are walking to school these days. And when you see this foot traffic and this bike traffic to and from school of elementary age and middle school age, I think we need to reassess some of the budget allowances for our community services department to go and install maybe some safety deterrents for people, because I have personally watched individuals speed through school zones. I have watched, and I know I have at least 5 in my elementary schools in the unincorporated area that I've watched individuals speed through. So, and I know there's a number of schools in a majority of our districts. So we need to have that discussion and see how we can help the process, because we keep talking about Vision Zero and safe streets and how we walk and kids to walking to school, and we talk about public health. But if we're not providing them a safe space to get to school, we've already had 6 children injured in a month's time since school started due to vehicle versus student accidents. So whatever we can do from the unincorporated area to improve the budget so that we can get flashers, sidewalks improved, whatever that may be, I think we need to seriously look at that as a board, and as we go into budget process next year, see how we can possibly reallocate or find funding for a program of that nature. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right, I have no one else signed in, and I see that Under Sheriff Yarborough is back in the room, so I will make the comment again. We've had a lot of complaints on Dolores. Hopefully you guys can maybe send a couple of my buddy motor officers out there and convince people it's not a good idea to speed down Dolores. Okay, anything else, commissioners? All right, thank you so much. That was quite a robust comment period. It's good. Mr. Manager, item number 7.
Chair, that takes us to item number 7. This is your consent agenda, items 7A through 7J2.
Okay, commissioners, I know there was some mention on having some conversation or having some things pulled. Anything, commissioners? Nothing out of the consent agenda? Okay. Okay, I will entertain a motion.
So, Mr. Chair, I would move to approve the consent agenda as drafted.
I have a motion by Commissioner Lucy, second by Commissioner Jung. Madam Clerk, is there any public comment on the consent agenda?
There's nobody signed in.
Okay, seeing none, I will close that. Commissioners, any discussion? Seeing none, motion Lucy, second Jung. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Please affirm your votes. Okay. Mr. Manager, that brings us to item number 8. You want to do a block before item 8? We can certainly do that. That's okay with me. I'll entertain that.
All right, Mr. Chair, at this time, in a form of a motion, I would recommend that we block the following items under consideration today. Those item numbers would be 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 17, 18, and 19, and 20. Actually.
Okay. I have a motion by Commissioner Lucy, second by Commissioner Burke-Bigler. Mr. Manager, well, I have Commissioner Herman, were you signed in? Did you have a question on one of those items?
On 11 and 14, I was going to request that we have a little explanation about those two. Just for the public's knowledge, so they
Okay.
know what we're doing with that money.
Okay. Or with just some explanation and still leaving them in the block vote, or did you want to pull them from the block vote, Commissioner?
No, we can block vote them, but just that they be,
Okay, so Mr. Manager, I'm going to have you read them. I will then call for public comment. Actually, we'll have the explanation on those two, and then we'll call for public comment.
All right, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, item number 10 is a recommendation to approve a purchase order agreement with U.S. Imaging, Inc., 400 South Franklin Street, Saginaw, Michigan, in joinder with the Nye County agreement for on-site bound and mechanical book scanning for an assortment of land and vital records, cost estimated to be $500,000 in fiscal year 2020, utilizing the Recorder's Technology Fund, and if approved, authorize the purchasing and contracts manager to execute the agreement for the same. Item number 11 is a recommendation to approve amendment number 1 to the agreement for construction services, increasing the contract amount by $68,581 for a total contract amount of $343,588 and extending the contract date to December 31st, 2019 for the South Truckee Meadows Steamboat Lift Station Force Main Bypass Project. Item number 12 is a recommendation to approve the 2019 Washoe County Regional Park and Open Space Master Plan. I do want to note that that was actually approved by the Open Space and Regional Parks Commission for this board. So, item number 14 is a recommendation to approve a resolution to augment the Capital Improvement Fund in the amount of $2.5 million to increase fiscal year 2020 budget authority for projects related to current and future mitigation of flood/stormwater impacts to the North Valleys, as directed by the Board of County Commissioners on August 27, 2019, and direct the Comptroller's Office to make necessary budget amendments. Item number 15 is a recommendation to approve the owner CMAR construction agreement between Washoe County and Q&D Construction, LLC for the guaranteed maximum price, GMP number 2, for Building 8 Central and Building 8 South of the Northern Nevada Adult Mental Health System Homeless Housing Project in the amount of $1,250,642. Item number 17 is a recommendation to approve fiscal year 1920 interlocal cooperative agreement for operation of the Community Assistance Center and other homeless services among the City of Reno, Washoe County, and City of Sparks, retroactive for the period of July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2020, in an amount not to exceed $3,952,811, with the county share being $2,759,584. Item number 18 is a recommendation to accept federal Title IV-B Subpart 2 grant awards from the State of Nevada Division of Child and Family Services in the amount of $14,644 with a county match of $4,881.34 for family support, $39,938 with a county match of $13,312.66 for family preservation, $55,025 with a county match of $18,341.67 for family reunification, and $167,603 with a county match of $55,867.66 for adoption, promotion, and support, retroactive to July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. Retroactively authorize the Director of Human Services Agency to execute the sub-grant awards and direct the Comptroller's Office to make necessary budget amendments. Item number 19 is a recommendation to accept federal Title IV-B subgrant award from the State of Nevada Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Child and Family Services in the amount of $212,004 with a $70,668 county match for Washoe County Child Welfare Services, retroactive July 1st, 2018 through September 30th, 2019, and authorize the Director of Human Services Agency to execute the subgrant award and related documents and direct the Comptroller's Office to make the necessary budget amendments. And finally, item number 20 is a recommendation to accept a federal Title IV-E subgrant award from the State of Nevada Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Child and Family Services in the amount of $18,908,244 with a county match of $11,063,178 for Washoe County Child Welfare Services retroactive July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. Authorize the Director of the Human Services Agency to execute the resolutions for subgrant award and related documents, and authorize a subgrant agreement between Washoe County and the Washoe County School District to pass through Title IV-E federal funds to for reimbursement for actual expenses incurred to provide out-of-zone transportation for children in foster care allowed under Title IV-E of the Social Security Act, which is estimated to be an annual cost of $300,000, and approve the resolution necessary for the same.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Manager. Who do we have from staff that can represent the two items that Commissioner Herman had in question?
So Division Director of Engineering and Capital Projects from the Community Service Department, Dwayne Smith, is here to handle those two items.
Welcome, Mr. Smith.
Good morning. For the record, Dwayne Smith, Director of Engineering and Capital Projects for Washoe County. I'll start with item
11.
11. Thank you. This is part of our critical infrastructure located in the South Truckee Meadows to convey wastewater flows from parts of the collection system to our South Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility. One of the challenges is that we don't have the necessary redundancy and resiliency in a particular force main from our largest lift station. So we initiated a project to give us some of that flexibility, some of that redundancy and resiliency in the system. That project was awarded. After award, it was noted that there was a couple of issues associated with the depth of the force main, and then also an opportunity to do some maintenance work associated with an air vac assembly. It exceeds the threshold of Board of County policy for the amount of change order. So because of that, we bring these projects, these change orders to you for your consideration.
Okay. And then the next item was it 14 or 15?
It's item number 14.
Yep. Okay.
Item number 14.
Well, hold on a second. Commissioner Herman, did you have any question on that? On item 11?
Second here. I guess we're on. One question I had from the folks was, just out of curiosity, where does the effluent go from that particular facility?
The South Truckee Meadows, to the Commissioner through the Chair, the South Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility discharge permit requires that all of our water that's produced, all of our treated effluent, be utilized either through land application, irrigation. For instance, we do a lot with golf courses located in the South Truckee Meadows and also with parks. Our South Valleys Regional Park is one of those examples. Also with schools, we have fortunately a lot of use of our highly treated effluent for schools and also for streetscapes. We also use this water in conjunction with new construction projects, everything from dust control to even some of the larger projects that we've seen in the South Truckee Meadows. For instance, NDOT's new bridge spanning Galena Creek a few years ago, our highly treated effluent was used in batching of the concrete. So all of that water is used for beneficial purposes in the South Truckee Meadows.
Thank you.
And Commissioner, I would highly encourage you to have staff give you a tour, look at it's a lake, literally. What do we call it? Would you call it Huffaker Lake?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's tucked up there in the hills. That's the storage that we recall recently relined because we were getting leakage, and so now we've basically secured that facility, and it's a wonderful, wonderful retention or detention, I should say,
My
until we're ready to use.
Were just from the folks that have questions, and I'm repeating their questions, so.
Again, I would encourage you to go and visit the facility. Item 14.
Item number 14 was basically to take available funding and to budget it in this current fiscal year budget so that that funding can be utilized for mitigation and current responses to flood activities primarily within the North Valley. So this was to to create budget authority for the use of that money.
And, okay.
Please.
So their question was, how will that be used? Is it, you have, I'm sure, a plan that it's budgeted for?
And again, through the chair to the commissioner, yes, as part of the presentation that we made a couple of board meetings ago, there's still a lot of activity that's occurring within the North Valleys, both current activities associated with the barrier systems, the stormwater pumps, and making sure that we secure those areas to provide protections for the community, but also with a focus to the future mitigation planning work to address closed basins and some of the long-term needs and solutions that are required.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Smith. Madam Clerk, Commissioners, is there anyone else who has questions? Okay. Madam Clerk, would you call public comment on any of the items in?
There's nobody signed in.
Okay. I have no one signed in. Is there anyone wishing to speak on the block vote? Okay, seeing none, I will close that. Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Lucy, second by Commissioner Burke-Bigler. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? I believe motion carries unanimously. It does. Please affirm your votes, Commissioners. Mr. Manager, that takes us back to item number 8.
Yes, item number 8 is an update on the Washoe County Manager recruitment and possible direction on the interview process for the top candidates to be held during a special meeting scheduled for September 30th, 2019. And our Human Resources Director, Patricia Hurley, is here to give that update.
Ms. Hurley, welcome.
Thank you. Patricia Hurley, Washoe County Human Resources, for the record. Before I begin, I would like to just say that Heather Rensselaer from Mouth Anderson was scheduled to provide you with the update today, but unfortunately she had a death in the family, so she was unable to make it. Therefore, I'll be sharing some of her notes that she has shared with me to make sure that you guys are up to date with where we're heading. The panel's assessment of candidates did take place on Wednesday, September 18th. The panel was comprised of representatives from the region, and the purpose of the panel was to generate feedback on those candidates, which will be shared with each board member. 3 candidates will advance to the public interviews, which will be held on a special meeting of September 30th. During the September 30th meeting, the 3 candidates will provide the board with a 5-minute presentation highlighting their experience and professional background. This will be followed by an interview with the board. Heather will be working with you, if she has not already, to provide interview questions prior to that meeting. Once all of the interviews have taken place, the board will proceed to a nomination process to identify the top candidate for the Washoe County Manager's position. The nomination process will mirror the process that was used for the recent legislative appointment and is outlined in today's staff report. Thank you, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Let me turn this on. It works much better when I do. Commissioner Herman, I have you signed in. Okay? Okay, Commissioners, any questions for Ms. Hurley? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Are we styled? Let me pull this back up. Just, okay. Okay, I have a motion to acknowledge the update. And a second. Is there any public comment on this item, Madam Clerk? Okay. I will close public comment. Have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, who made the motion, please?
Commissioner Burke-Bigler.
Okay.
Second by Commissioner Lucy. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I apologize. I should have confirmed that. Okay. Motion by Commissioner Burke-Bigler, second by Vice Chair Lucy. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, I believe. Please affirm your votes. Thank you. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Chair, that takes us to item number 9, which is an introduction and first reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 65 of the Washoe County Code.
Madam Clerk.
This will be Bill number 1830, an ordinance amending Chapter 65 of the Washoe County Code by expanding the permissible use of the 911 telephone line surcharge to include the purchase and maintenance of portable event recording devices and vehicular event recording devices for use by law enforcement agencies, including the Washoe County School District Police, as well as the Washoe County Department of Alternative Sentencing, in accordance with the 2019 legislature's enactment of Senate Bill 89 by clarifying the powers and duties of the 911 Emergency Response Advisory Committee and by amending the advisory committee membership, terms of appointment, and quorum provisions. And the second reading for this is set for October 22nd, 2019.
Okay, thank you. We have Ms. Rodriguez here.
Good afternoon, Commission. As mentioned during last week's legislative review, SB 89 did a couple of things, and so this is just amending our Chapter 65 to mirror those changes. So what the ordinance will do is open the potential funding for body cameras from the E911 surcharge to both the Washoe County School District Police and alternative sentencing. This adds the non-voting member to the E911 board from the school district. It also clarifies the terms so that it'll match the current staggered terms that we have of those board members. It will include the school district member, which will be our 10th member, in determining quorum. So the quorum will go from 5 members to 6 members. However, because they are a non-voting member, it would be 5 votes, which would be a majority vote, excuse me, to pass anything. And then, as mentioned, we're looking for a second reading of October 22nd. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Mr. Lucy. Actually, before we do this, Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on this item?
There's nobody signed in.
Thank you. Mr. Lucy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I move to introduce Bill 1830 to host a second reading on October 22nd, 2019.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. That's it. That's all we need. Okay.
Mr. Chair, that'll take us to item number 13, which is a recommendation to acknowledge receipt of the Washoe County Administration Complex Master Plan update prepared by Collaborative Design Studio and the Washoe County Sheriff's Office Master Plan prepared by Arrington Watkins Architects, LLC. One as a professional recommendation for the long-term needs of these county facilities and hopefully to provide direction to staff to explore financing and implementation strategies for the future needs identified within each master plan. And again, Division Director Dwayne Smith with the Community Services Department is here to give just a brief overview of these two items.
Can we have the overhead, please?
Mr. Smith, welcome, sir.
Good afternoon again. For the record, Dwayne Smith, Director of Engineering Capital Projects. I have with me Brett Steinhardt. Brett is a project manager and oversaw the 9th Street Administration Complex master planning efforts, and he's here also to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you for that. I just wanted to quickly step through this. I've only got a couple of displays I wanted to show you, but it's a standard of practice, and as was done prior with other facilities and master plans, to bring them to you for your acknowledgement, for your information. So you have before you today the 911 PAR Sheriff's Office and Jail Master Plan for your acknowledgement, as well as the 9th Street Administration Complex Master Plan. And of course, briefly just to touch on the purpose, goals, and the next steps that go along with master planning. Master planning is done throughout all areas of the county: parks, libraries, the utility, courts, etc. It's an important tool that helps us identify the needs and potential uses of our county facilities. It's to help inform you and the rest of the staff about what those needs are and to provide a basis for capital investments. Master plans are living documents, so you have seen versions of these in the past, and of course, over time, priorities change, needs change, and that is why we continue to update these master plans as we go.
Mr. Smith, just for the viewing public, and we all know what it means, but define living document.
Living document is kind of coined, that term is kind of coined to refer to something that is not static or is not stagnant, something that requires continual review, continual effort to maintain its effectiveness and usefulness. And when we think about living documents, we think about a lot of different things, but not anything more so appropriate than master planning work, because again, the work of the county is dynamic. It is not static. It changes over the time. It responds to changes in the community needs and also changes in needs of staff.
Very important. Thank you so much.
Using steering committees, staff, stakeholder groups, and data such as historic trends, regional adopted growth projections, operational strategies and changes, our goals for master planning are to make sure that we incorporate best practice concepts into all the work that we do. Things like Office of the Future, you may have heard that term coined, or collaborative interface. So those are some of the things that get incorporated through best practices concepts. We also want safe and efficient optimal access for the interaction between customers and staff. This is how the county does its business, and we need to make it easier for staff so that it can be easier for our customers. And of course, as I said, there's always a focus on safety. So anytime we're looking through master planning efforts, we want to focus on the safety both of our staff and on the community that we service. And of course, flexibility is very important as we look at what we're doing now and as we move into the future. Just to affirm with you the next steps, so with this item, the second half of the ask is for you to give direction to staff for prioritization and funding strategies. I know ACM Valetich is coming to you in the very near future at your direction to bring some financial discussions. But I just wanted to reaffirm with you why I had a moment that anytime we're doing master planning work, that of course we're coming to you to receive prioritization and direction for funding strategies and implementation. And also these help inform us as we go through the processes to bring you recommendations for the county's capital improvement plans and also as part of our overall strategic goals and plans. And with that, I would be happy to entertain any questions. And again, Mr. Steinhardt is here as well.
Commissioners, any questions? I have no one signed. Oh, I'm sorry. I beg your pardon. Commissioner Jung.
Yeah, I would like to see, I think I brought this up with you when we spoke before. Can you do an analysis of, I want you to look at the liability that we have faced over the past 10 years, perhaps, and what populations that we have that are most litigious, AKA the jail, as well as loss of life with the suicides that we had in the jail and how much money we've paid out based on facility master unplanning or not up to standards that would protect the county taxpayers of paying out millions of dollars because of liabilities that we have outstanding. So that's the way that we should be prioritizing before we're ever talking about funding, is where are we losing money and bleeding money from the taxpayers, more than any other consideration, I believe, should be staunch the flow of cash that we're paying out to attorneys to then distribute as they will to their harmed clients, and see how we can make the financial argument for that. I believe that needs to be part of the analysis, is the risk part of that. Ms. Volatich and Mr. Smith, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair Lucy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Smith, I have a quick question in the Arrington Watkins recommendations for 911 PAR. They put in their recommendations high priority and lower priority, and obviously high priority has a number of items on there. Now, are they prioritized in the report the way that they recommend, or is that by sheriff's recommendation, or are they even organized? Is they all high priority? I agree with Commissioner Jung in the sense that prioritization of where are we bleeding money, where are our challenges, where is the most liability lie with us? Those are the issues that I'd like to see, because based upon their high priority, they might as well just wrote 911 PAR as a priority, because that's everything in that building, from my understanding, outside of the only thing they didn't include was the pavement outside. So when we talk about things like that, I'd like to know specifically, because if it is a tiered process, if there is a way to approach this, because currently at the current capacity, we do not have the funding and the CIP budget to really address all of these needs as we need. What is the tiered system? What is that prioritized? And the other thing in regards to the the study, the master plan study done by Collaborative Design Studio for the East 9th Street building. Some of the challenges that I see, they're very specific in their needs. You know, they obviously point out some of the challenges that we have and their recommendations on growth here. But what specifically are they looking at? Because they're talking about a 30 or a 20-year forecast, you know, into 2038. Specifically, what are there departments that can be repurposed in different locations in different assets within the county? What are the discussions there? How can better space be utilized here at the East 9th Street building? That's some of the discussion I'd like to see that I don't see in the report. So maybe we can have that more robust discussion at a later time and date. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I don't have anyone else signed in, so I'll ask a couple of questions. What I don't see, and while I recognize that this is addressing funding, but I don't see how we're working. I know the Rodeo Association really wants to build a new complex, and as part of that construction project, they've talked about a parking garage. And I know that we had some conversations with them, although under item number 6, it says I am just lost here today. Parking spaces are sufficient to accommodate forecast staff levels in 2038 with no modifications. How are we working with the Rodeo Association for the upgrades that they potentially, and I say potentially because I don't think they've got their funding mechanism in place yet, but are we looking at how they can possibly affect us?
Mr. Chair, I think that the best answer to your question is two-part. First of all, yes, as part of the master planning work, we did meet with rodeo officials to let them know that we are going through the master planning process and to solicit input from them as they look at their future projects associated with the area north of us. We are, of course, potentially at any time on different tracks, but we have a commitment that we would look at them and help them understand what we're doing when we do that, and the ask would be the same of them. So we want to look for opportunities to partner to make best sense of the facilities. If the timing works, I think that is something that we would absolutely do.
Okay. No, and I understand. I get that it's all somewhat nebulous right now, but I just wasn't sure where we were when I look at parking spaces are sufficient to accommodate forecast staff levels. So that's all. And the armory is gone now?
I don't think it's gone yet. I think it's very, very, very close.
Almost. We're close. I see Mr. Solero smiling as like a Cheshire cat over there.
So for the record, Dave Solero, Interim County Manager, RSCVA is going through the asbestos abatement process right now, and then they will be raising that building and providing additional parking at that location. So, the discussion around parking is an interesting one when you get into master planning. I think the discussion specific to a parking garage, one thing that it allows is better use potentially of our footprint and our space. This master plan goes out 20 years. There's a potential that in 20 years we may need additional building space or something, and that may be a time when we talk about use of a parking structure, for instance. However, one of the things that is necessary for the rodeo, and one of the things that they've had in the troubles with in the past, is that real estate. How do they get enough people to park close to the event to be able to do that?
Oh my goodness!
It's an interesting conversation to have, especially when you've got a facility like the rodeo or the fairgrounds or the RSCVA utilizing that space for big events coming in, and how do you best capitalize on parking without overcharging for yourself to have parking? Parking garages are expensive. So.
And just ingress, egress into that parcel. Surprisingly, I get the biggest complaints when the rodeo is on by UNR students, because they can't use wells. They can't get up wells. Some of them live and they are forced to sort of go some different directions. They have to make modifications to to the direction that they're going. And I know that there are some alternate routes, but it's just tough. And I know they funnel everybody around because because of just the whole parking scenario. And I think that if they were ever to see their dreams come to fruition, to realization, that all could potentially change. And I'm not trying to insert that into our master plan, but we certainly do need to understand what their goals, their objectives are, the timelines, and how it will affect Washoe County, and make appropriate adjustments to our plan based on those goals and objectives. Commissioner Jung, I have you signed in next.
Yeah, that made me think of something. Have we ever thought of building a parking garage and charging for special events? Not for people to come. I don't like the way that Reno has that. You have to pay to get in to go see your government, another tax on you. Not for staff, not for visitors. I think it's repugnant. What I would like to see is, can we look at the financial feasibility a la the Reno Tahoe International Airport, who would not be where they're at today had they not had a parking garage. That's where they make all their money. Maybe Washoe County should make a parking garage for all these RSCBA events that people come in. And I mean good events that people will pay for. That should be our number one quality. That's why people won't park and pay at the rodeo, because that's not a group of people that has a lot of money that sees a value in paying for parking. I mean, these are outdoors men and women who are rugged and happy to walk. So why don't we look at, that could be, I mean, maybe we'll never have to raise a tax again in Washoe County if we had a good parking garage for big events that we charged, like the Reno Tahoe International Airport. We don't have to recreate the wheel, just ask them how they did it, how much it cost, and when they were solvent, because I believe they were paid off in less than 5 years to build their whole facility there, and they live and die on their parking fees. So can we look at that as well as a master plan development? Or maybe it needs to go right downtown where the Pioneer Center for the Performing Arts gets to use our parking facility and never pays for our parking facility. We could be making some money, guys. And I don't know if it's good, bad, or indifferent. It's maybe a little mean, but if the airport can do it, why can't I do it? Charlotte, North Carolina does it too. I've never been there, but I will look that up. But we should, but not for taxpayers. I don't think you should have to pay, whether it's $1 or de minimis. Don't make me do that, monkeying around, when I'm going to talk to my government that I conceivably have already paid taxes to be here for. But for special events, overflow, whatever it may be, let's start charging people. People will pay for I will pay for parking. I don't ever blink until it's for seeing my own government. Parking doesn't hurt my feelings to pay for it. So even though I have lived here for 20 years and I do expect all valet parking to be free, which is a misnomer. Go to Nashville. Valet parking is only that your car gets a really nice stay for the weekend. Thank you.
You're welcome. Commissioner Burke-Bigler, I have you signed in next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as I look at these, it looks, these recommendations, it appears that one of the things that we're attempting to do here is to consolidate county businesses that are located in other places back here at this complex, so that we really have the majority of county business in this complex. Is that an accurate assessment of what's being proposed here?
To the Commissioner through the Chair, I think that you expect us to look at, and our consultants to look at all options when we start talking about the heady costs of capital improvements that Washoe County is facing based on growth, based on need. That part of what our job is to do is to look at these options and understand and make determinations through our steering committees, through our stakeholder groups, and then ultimately to receive direction from you how we might best implement those. So yes, options are critical.
Well, I think that's an excellent idea, largely because if you have children and you're in the system and you've got to take them to the health district over here, and then you've got to take them to the building downtown to meet with their counselor downtown, that it would seem to me a much better service that we would be providing to our constituents if they came to this campus and they were here for their health visits as well as their mental health visits and all of that. So I kind of agree that that's what this looks like, and I would be very supportive of that. Thank you.
Vice Chair Lucy, I have you signed in again.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think this is a really prudent conversation, and I know Assistant County Manager Valetich is going to bring back more of a robust financial plan as we discuss this. But as Mr. Smith pointed out, and so did you, Chairman, that obviously you have to prioritize these projects. We have sat many years, Commissioner Jung sat here in this chair at this dais for years when they were challenged to deal with CIP. And we have a ton of deferred maintenance within our county that our 2,400 employees have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. You talk to our roads crews, you talk to anybody in any department, they've got outdated challenges in each department. I don't want, we can bring up the Second Judicial Court all day long because I hate walking into 75 Court Street. It just irritates me. But the idea is now is the time to have this discussion, this robust discussion, because as you pointed out, Chairman, there at one point interest rates were barely sub 10, but probably over 10. Right now, we're very lucky that we're seeing interest rates around 2% and that our bonding capacity is available, that as we see some of our bonds hopefully expire and paid off, that we can currently maximize the opportunities available with these low interest rates and what we're doing on a national level. So I think that's important that we really do address this and find the things that we can prioritize and deliver immediately, because as we see a growing region of 6 to 7% year after year here, we have people that are demanding services, not just the wealthy, but everybody. Everybody is demanding services. They need health services. They need sheriff services. They need roads. They need everything. And it is our job at the county to deliver those services. And if we don't have an adequate ability to do so, and that all starts from infrastructure, we will always be chasing the 8 ball. We will always be making a prudent plea to everybody to go, well, we'll try to fix it for you. That doesn't work. We need to make some difficult decisions in the near future to make this a viable county for very many years to come, quite a few future generations that we talk about, because we can't keep just kicking the ball down the road, so to speak. We need to really take advantage of the situation we have in front of us right now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And I think there was a point, Commissioner Burke-Bigler brought this up. Commissioner Jung also made note of it, and I know Commissioner Lucy has talked about it in the past as well. We own some fairly valuable properties downtown, and if we decide at some point that there's a consolidation of our resources here at 9th, potentially those properties could dramatically offset some of the costs. And even to Commissioner Jung's point, I mean, imagine having it's tough to park downtown in certain places. If you want to go to Midtown, it's near impossible. It's near impossible to go to some places in Midtown during certain kinds of events. And so maybe as we look at the bigger at the bigger picture, potentially we can use those parcels to offset some of the costs that we might incur. Just again, food for thought. And I know we've talked about this. Some of that infrastructure is aging, and when it comes to the point where you say, look, it's not worth it to us to continue to maintain these parcels, we need to figure something else out. The property itself may have a greater value repurposed than trying to just continually pump money into maintenance. Commissioner.
Pointed out, as you said, all those assets downtown are in opportunity zones.
Yes.
Every one of them is in an opportunity zone.
Yeah, great point. Great point. Commissioner Jung, I have you signed in next up.
I think another thing to keep in mind, this might be getting a little bit off of the master plan, but not really, because we're talking about capital improvements. The city of Reno has historically, even when I worked there 15 years ago, done everything they could to not provide parking. And that's the number one argument I get from developers down there, right? Trying to open a restaurant, et cetera. There's no parking. Why aren't we building a parking garage and charging everybody for this? We could benefit off of their no parking philosophy, which, by the way, I'm on the fence with that philosophy, but it doesn't matter. I'm advocating for Washoe right now. We should be making money off a parking garage, which then would fund every single dream you have for capital improvement, while Reno keeps decreasing how much parking people can use and is assigned per business. Let's turn that into our moneymaker because of their folly, if you want to see it that way. But one thing I would say, it's the biggest little city. In every big city you've ever been to, there is no parking. Or your car gets a nice stay for the night that you get to pay for that parking. So that might be something that we get in front of and build it, put the money aside and figure out where that money goes, because people will pay for parking. I promise you. I pay for it, and I don't like to pay for a lot of stuff, but I will pay for parking. So let's look at some Ms. Volatich. I mean, Ms. Volatich, who's going to keep track of everything we've told her she has to bring us back? But that might be something, you know, and Commissioner Liu, the Vice Chairman, did say he knows of a place that has done that. So you might not have to do too much research and data accumulation, but that is something to look about. Instead of always looking at where we're going to spend, we should also be looking at where are opportunities that we're not capturing money that people would be happy to pay. And I'm not saying, like the rest of the state, that I think visitors and tourists should pay for my kids' education, my non-existent kids. I don't believe in that at all fundamentally. But if we are going to build something, let's make sure we build something that makes money so that we can then improve our staff's accommodation, our judges' accommodations, the downtown library, which we know is a disaster HVAC-wise, but also is a historical property, and I'd hate to see all those plants go. So if we could do a little bit outside of the box looking, let's see how we can generate our own money, or a 3P partnership, and we get have somebody else build it in the enterprise zone, and we get a fraction of their profit. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I don't want to stray too far. I think what we're talking about, this harkens of future agenda items on how we come back and talk about some of these things. Mr. Luparelli, I have you signed in.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, you're reading my mind. My spidey sense is going off over here.
Okay. I apologize.
There are
right.
nine recommendations in your staff report, and you can certainly query the staff on those, and you can certainly tell the staff you want to see additional things considered at a future agenda item. But when we start talking about property transactions and those kind of undertakings, we really need an agenda item that gives notice for that. It's the kind of thing that
understood
the public has a lot of interest in.
And I don't think we're making any decisions here. But I completely respect your advice. So, Commissioner Burke-Bigler, I see that you're no longer signed in.
Actually, I just had a question. Don't we own a parking garage that's right next door to the building on Center Street, across the street from the main library? Doesn't the county own that building?
That's correct.
I thought we did.
Okay. All right, I don't want to stray. All right, as we already have the sheep with our proverbial heads down, nibbling away, and then we look up and we don't know where we are. Okay, so I believe the way we're styled today, commissioners, is just to acknowledge this report. Recommendation to acknowledge the receipt. Okay, so I have a motion and I have a second. Hold on just a second. I have motion by Commissioner Burke-Bigler, second by Commissioner Lucy. Madam Clerk, is there anyone signed in for public comment?
There's no one signed in.
Okay, is there anyone wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, I will bring it back to the board. Okay, board, I have a motion by Commissioner Burke-Bigler, second by Vice Chair Lucy. Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Please affirm your votes. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Chair, that takes us to item number 21, which is public comment. Comment heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the commission agenda.
Madam Clerk.
There's nobody signed in.
Is there anyone in the public wishing to speak that is not signed in at this time? Seeing none, I will close public comment and bring it back to the board. Mr. Manager.
Mr. Chair, that takes you to item number 22, Commissioners, County Managers' announcements, reports, updates to include boards and commission updates, requests for information, or topics for future agendas.
Commissioner Burke-Bigler, I have you signed in first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Manager, I would like to get a breakdown report showing all of the money that the county is currently providing to homeless or for social welfare issues related to the children that we are taking care of. So kind of a breakdown that shows everything that we're actually spending. That actually might be available in the budget, but when I was thumbing through it, I didn't really see exactly what I wanted. One of the reasons is I keep getting questions about how much the county is donating and why isn't the county putting more money into social welfare programs and to homeless. And I'd like to kind of have that in my pocket. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Burke-Bigler. Commissioner Herman, I have you signed in next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two things I'd like to discuss, and one of them is I keep getting fan letters from the northern part of my district, and the message to me is roads, roads, roads. And then the second item is a question that I've been asked many times out in Palomino Valley, and I noticed on the park plan, there's no parks in our area, which is our postal area, and that's 89510. However, everybody pays taxes there, so I'm just wanting to get an answer for the folks out there. Why they pay taxes and have no services, and if there's money there for a park. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners, anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I will close that, and we are adjourned. Oh, Mr. Leporelli, we have no need for closed session. Okay, we're adjourned.